Hello, my name is Megan Roberts, and I am the Old Testament professor here at Prairie College in Three Hills, Alberta.
Dr. Megan Roberts. Megan, good to see you. Welcome to Exegetically Speaking.
Thank you for inviting me. Super
It's
fun.
it's so great. Yeah, I mean it's just nice. I mean I've heard about you, and I'm sure we've talked somewhere before, but it's just great that we can connect this way now that you're back in Canada. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, and you're probably experiencing better weather than we are right now because it's in the 90s here and threatening a tropical storm.
Oh dear. Well, yeah, it's actually chilly here today. We have
Ah,
not had very much warm weather here in Alberta yet, so
it's
that's why I'm
coming.
driving south soon to Colorado and have some summertime in Colorado.
You'll get a little bit of that. So, how did you get started reading biblical languages?
So I was probably in late middle school, and there was a man at my church who was an engineer, but had a great interest in classics and classical languages. And so while he was working full time as an engineer, he was also doing some sort of part-time studies at the university in classical Greek and I think Latin as well. And then his interest with classics also, was connected to an interest in church history, biblical languages. And so alongside classical Greek, he started studying biblical Koine Greek as well. And then
Hmm.
he started just leading a small group of, I don't know, two or three people who also wanted to learn biblical Greek. And for some reason that I cannot remember now, I went along one evening to this adult Greek reading or learning class and hadn't looked at anything, didn't know anything about it, but I loved it,
Nice,
absolutely loved it, and
nice.
went home and I told my mom. I was like, Mom, it was so fun, can I keep going? And so they were kind enough to let me join in, and I continued doing that for quite a while. Darren kept doing that class for quite a while, and at the end, he was very encouraging, just said, you're very gifted at this. I hope that one day you get to keep studying. So
Nice.
then, when I went to college at Moody Bible Institute and applied linguistics, that was my major, but I knew I wanted to take Greek. And I knew I wanted to take Hebrew too, but I decided to start with Greek.
Mm.
So then did 3 years of Greek at Moody, and then couldn't wait to learn Hebrew and did Hebrew at the Biblical Exegesis program at Wheaton. And yeah, have never looked back. And I'm so thankful that I've been given this great gift of being able to study the Bible in the original languages. There's just really, it becomes so much more alive and vivid.
Yeah.
And it's so fun, even though it's hard, very hard.
You said earlier that you had read Psalm 46 and it was very familiar, but what did you say to that?
Yes. So I was invited by the graduating class this past April to give the baccalaureate address, and their theme came from Psalm 46. So that was what my,
Hmm.
topic was for my baccalaureate address. And I thought, you know what? I'm so familiar with this psalm in English, but I've never read it in Hebrew. And so I took the time to read it in Hebrew, and I was just sort of amazed again at
Hmm.
how much more I gain from reading scripture in the original languages. And it's not like
Hmm.
I'm fluent. I need all of my translation helps and parsing helps to make sure I'm getting everything correct. But the way that you can see, I find that in poetry, Hebrew poetry, the imagery becomes so much more vibrant.
Hmm.
And, you know, as amazing as our English translations are, there's just nuances of wordplay and sound play and repetition and structural play
Yeah.
that you can't always capture in translation, even if the translation is excellent, which we have so many excellent English
Yeah.
translations.
Translations can do only so much, right? They can render meaning, but they can't always render the beauty of a
Mhm.
language or the structural pieces, like you said.
Mhm.
Well, this is what kind of psalm is this? The psalms sometimes are classified as different. How would you say this song? Is it a song of praise? Is it a song of lament? Some of and some of them have a little bit of this, a little bit of that too, right? They're
Yeah,
not all one kind or the other. How would you classify this?
it's definitely a communal psalm. So we have the plural language, God is our refuge and strength.
Mm,
We will not fear. So it's definitely a communal psalm. And it seems as well to be a liturgical psalm, so that this would have been something that the gathering of God's people at the temple or the tabernacle would have sung together.
mm,
So it's definitely a, a liturgical psalm of corporate prayer, of corporate worship. It recognizes the tottering and the roaring and the foaming and the instability of life,
mm, mm.
then also provides these, again, this is where I think the structure of the psalm is so, um, it gives us an experience of the anchoring that God is
Mm.
in the midst of the tottering and the foaming and the surging,
Yes,
because
I
it
like that.
begins with the affirmation of God being our refuge and strength, and then it punctuates it with the refrain of Yahweh of hosts is with us. A high fortress is the God of Jacob, and it says that twice in verse 7 and then verse 11. And so amidst the uproar and the battles and the devastations and the mountains falling into the heart of the sea,
Mm.
we're anchored at these key points in the psalm to remind us that in the city of God, because he is present in her, she does not totter.
Mm.
And the God of Jacob is our high fortress. And again, that's one of these words in Hebrew where, yeah, fortress, we get it, but there's different words for fortress. And
Mm.
this one in particular is communicating height.
Mm.
And so, again, the vividness of the imagery where nations are tottering and mountains are crumbling and the sea is foaming and surging, but then a high tower is where we find our refuge up and away from all of the chaos.
Wow, that's a beautiful retelling of that psalm.
It made me so excited.
So you gave this talk at the baccalaureate, right? So
I
one
did.
of the things people need to know is when you study these things and you're a preacher or teacher or Bible study leader, you get lots of good stuff from this.
Oh, incredibly so. I think sometimes people think about learning the biblical languages and all they can think about is how hard it is.
Hmm.
And I just encourage my students. I'm like, it's going to be worth it.
Hmm.
And try to introduce them as early on as possible in their language learning journey to real biblical text where they can see things like I just communicated so that they can experience the for themselves that you don't have to be fluent. You just have to have good grounding in the tools
Hmm.
to be able to access
Yeah.
the the best resources and the biblical text.
And there are
And
some amazing tools that you have so that you don't necessarily have to be somebody that can just pick up the Hebrew and just read it cover to cover, right? You can grapple with it. You can wrestle with it. I love that image of Jacob, wrestling with God kind of thing. And that's what we do with the Greek text or the Hebrew text. We wrestle with it. And so that's a beautiful way. Megan, I think a lot of people might know this psalm from verse 10 because maybe they memorized that at one point. I wrote a song years and years ago about this, but it says sort of literally in this translation, the English Standard Version, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth." But you found something really kind of unique there.
yeah, so when I was translating, I don't know what I was expecting to find in verse 10, but I was not expecting to find the verb, and it's rafa.
Hmm.
And in the Hifil, it means something along the lines of let go or leave off or release,
Hmm.
let alone. Sometimes it's translated even as abandon. So in Deuteronomy 4:31, God says that he will not let go of you or ruin you or forget you or abandon you. He will not let you go, right? It's this
Ah,
verb. And so, amidst all of the shaking and the tottering of the mountains and the nations, it's imagery that makes us feel like we want to hold on and grip and hold things steady before they crumble into the sea. And God's response to that feeling to us is let go.
Oh,
I am God.
yeah. I
I will
love it.
be exalted in the earth, and I am your refuge. Let go. It amazed me. It was not what I was expecting. And so, be still is a good translation, but it doesn't quite capture the sense of you're gripping something and God is telling us, let go and know who I
That's beautiful. That's
am.
beautiful. I mean, I've always thought about it. Well, we just need to quiet ourselves down and know who God is, but it's really more. There's just so much that we need to let go of in the midst of
Trust.
life's tumults, problems, grief,
Mm.
whatever it might be. Let it go. Man, I love it. I love it. Megan Roberts, thanks for being with us today on Exegetically Speaking.
My pleasure.
Thanks to Megan Roberts for being with us on Exegetically Speaking, her first time. We'll be sure to have her back. I wish this were a video podcast and you could have seen how animated she became when she was talking about this particular psalm. You could tell it just resonated with her in just powerful, important ways. Really grateful for that. From time to time, we get emails from a variety of people. This one comes to us from Africa. And one day I was doing a podcast with a guy in South Africa, and then I talked about the wonderful continent of Africa in that podcast. And this is the email that came back from a fellow named Dan. He said, I thought you might like to know that I listen regularly in Zambia. I'm an American. My wife and I have lived here since late 2019. I work in theological education among Lutheran pastors in Cameroon, Ethiopia, Kenya, Malawi, Nigeria, Uganda, and Zambia. All three of our daughters have bachelor's degrees from Wheaton College. Wow. Great testimony there. Hey, we'd love to hear from you, particularly if you're a long way from these United States. We'd love to hear from you. Here's how you do that. Just email us at exegetically.speaking@wheaton.edu. That's exegetically.speaking@wheaton.edu. And we'll get that, and we'll read some of these on the air. I want to say thanks to our Wheaton-based colleagues. They know who they are. Until next time, I'm David Capes. Thanks for listening.